We have a ton of clients that come in with flat feet, but they really range in severity. And they say they were born with it. A lot of times they are born with some form of flat feet, but the severity can range. And when we develop the arch muscles of the foot, then their pain goes down significantly. Over time, they can rebuild the arch. They're never gonna have high arches. My wife has high arches. My feet are never gonna look like hers, but mine can improve within my anatomy, and I can improve that over time. So let's get into the video. When we look at the foot and the arch, we have to really look at the anatomy of it. So this is my foot right here. Well, this isn't mine, this is Billy's foot. Okay, so what happens is when he puts weight down on the ground right here, then this rotates. So we can see how these bones rotate in and out. And we can do that, and we can create an arch with our foot. And it can't go extremely high. This is stable right here. That navicular bone will drop down as well. And so a lot of that flat feet, if you feel the bottom of your foot, you're gonna feel these bones. There's a bony protuberance on the bottom right here, and that's where a lot of people feel that starts impacting with the ground, and that in itself becomes a problem. We're stretching out all those muscles. A lot of that has to do with our focus on what happens at the hip. So the whole anatomy of the leg and what happens at the hip is going to dictate what happens at the foot. So there are muscles that are wrapping around Billy's hip right here that pull his femur out to the side, and then that will pull his foot up. So the same thing right here, that when I am putting pressure down on my foot, I can put pressure here, not using these hip muscles, or I can use the hip muscles and pull it out to the side, and I create this arch. So you can see that an arch gets created and built up just by what I'm using in the hip. So we always need to start at the hip and develop those muscles, because the hip is going to be what's going to be able to keep our body weight up. Those are bigger muscle groups. We still need to develop the foot and the arch muscles, but there is a much bigger focus when we fix this in the clinic. There's a much bigger focus on building those hip muscles. If we can sustain the pressure up here, up the chain, and we can keep that knee outside the second toe, then those muscles in the foot, they can perform when we're taking that pressure off with the hip muscles. The second major thing that happens with a fallen arch is a lack of dorsiflexion. So when we are bending our ankle, so bending my ankle up like that, that is dorsiflexion. So a lot of times what we'll see is when people do squats is that they'll drop down into a squat and their feet will turn out like that. That's because their ankle can't bend enough. And so they'll turn out to the sides, or they'll come up like this onto their toes. So if you're doing a squat and you can't get down to 90 degrees and that ankle doesn't bend enough, if my foot is making adjustments, if I'm having compensations like my foot is turning out or my weight is coming up onto my toes, my heels are coming up, then that means we're not having enough dorsiflexion. So the hip engagement, firing up those muscles in the glutes, and then also dorsiflexion, being able to bend enough at the ankle, those are the two things that we address and where we have a lot of success with fixing these fallen arches here in the clinic. Starting with the hip, so we're looking at this glute muscle right here. So it's wrapping around and grabbing the femur, and it's got to pull it out to the side like this. So our first exercise that we're going to do it in standing. If we do a bunch of muscles without weight bearing, then it doesn't make a ton of sense, because you're going to go walk against gravity and you're going to be falling on that arch all the time. What we want to do is actually do our exercises in standing. So we want to engage these muscles. The only stretches, there are good stretches for a fallen arch, but it's around dorsiflexion in our calves. So the major thing is that we have to fire up those glute muscles. There's not a good stretch for firing up the glute muscles. We have to actually use them, right? So what we're gonna do, we do a standing carpet ripper. So I'm trying to rip the carpet apart like I'm sliding. So I'll get onto one foot and then I'm driving my foot out to the side, but I'm doing it with my glute. So when I push, I'm sliding the ball of my foot and my toes engage with the carpet, and I'm trying to drive apart. So even if you're wearing a shoe, you should be just driving apart inside your shoe. I'm driving out to the side and I'm holding it for 30 seconds. All these muscles in my glute. You notice that my position when I do this is that I actually come back with my butt. I don't want to just squat down. If I squat down right here, I'm not using a ton of my glute. I'm using a lot of my quad. I want to shift my hips back. So that's why we work on hip hinging exercises. Shift my hips back and then driving to the side, firing those glute muscles, and I'm holding it for 30 seconds. This is a hard exercise. I'm sweating right now and I'm out of breath. This is a hard exercise. So we do 2 sets of 30 seconds. So I'm going to do one to the other side. So this foot's in line with my toe. So my toe's in line with my heel. And then I drive out to the side, engaging with the ball of my foot and my toes. And I'm holding that for 30 seconds, just trying to drive my foot out to the side. And you can see that I'm creating an arch right there. So I'm working the hips, but I'm also working the bottom of the foot when I do this exercise. Number 2 is arch walks. So I do this when I'm in the bathroom, walking to the shower. So I'm actually in my closet, walking to the shower. So what I'll do is I'm taking my foot and I'm actually gripping with my toes and I'm walking my foot across my closet. So I'm creating an arch. I'm using all my plantar flexion muscle, or the plantar fascia. I'm gripping with my toes and I'm walking across the carpet. So, and I do it as a distance, it's about 20 steps. So just with my toes gripping, and it's just a much more challenging exercise. A couple ways that people do this is they'll do foot swipes like this, just creating an arch right there. Or they'll take a towel and they'll put it underneath their toes and they'll do toe grips, like just slicing. They'll do it for about a minute. So if you do it for about a minute, I really like to walk the foot. So I'm walking and creating an arch. I do that with my big toe and my little toe. So all of the toes are gonna grip. I wanna get every part of my foot engaged so that I can get as many muscle fibers as possible. And I think about doing 20 steps or doing it for a minute where I'm just gripping and pulling myself down. And I'll make that adjustment. And I'm walking, my toe gets to my heel and I do about 5 at a time. And then I get my toe to my heel again. And I'll do that consistently. So doing 20, so 4 sets of 5. And I'm really working the plantar fascia, the bottom of the foot and all the muscles in between. Your posterior tibialis is your arch muscle, but you're gonna get that when you do the carpet ripper. So this is really working on the plantar fascia, working on those gripping muscles on the bottom of the foot. Number 3 is a calf stretch. So this is where stretching really gets involved. When we're looking at our anatomy of the lower leg, we have 2 different muscles that we have to focus on. So this is the gastroc. This muscle crosses the knee. And so when our knee's straight, we're stretching this gastroc muscle. Underneath that, if I can get this out, you can see this right here. This is the soleus. This is an even bigger muscle right here. When our knee's bent, we're really primarily using or stretching the soleus. So when we do these calf stretches, we actually want to do both. So I'll lean up against a table or a wall and I'll get back like this. I'm pressing my heel down. I want to make sure that this knee is not inside the second toe or in front of the toes because I don't want to put pressure on the knee. But I also want to make sure that my heel is pressed down. My knee is straight for 30 seconds. I'm holding that. And then my knee is bent for 30 seconds, but I keep my heel down on the ground. So you'll feel that stretch change. So when my knee's straight right here, I'm gonna feel it much higher up in the calf. That soleus comes all the way down right here, and it's more muscly rather than tendinous. So when I get that knee bent, now I'm gonna feel it down in the bottom of the calf, and I feel it in the front of the ankle. Another benefit to that is you'll feel that front of that ankle, and we have a joint capsule in the front of that ankle and in the back of that ankle. And so when the knee's bent, we get a little bit of a joint mobilization. If you have any questions about that, you can leave them in the comments. We have another mobilization that we do with a band that we can show you on how to mobilize that joint with some external pressure. With our calf stretches, we want to do 30 seconds with the knee straight, 30 seconds with the knee bent. We want to do each side at least once and then do it twice a day. So we're doing that routine twice a day, going through all of the exercises and the stretches so that we can rebuild that arch. Now, what about arch support? So arch support is really good. If you're having irritation, if you're having pain in your arches of your feet, do an arch support, super feet, or something generic you can start out with. It's really not important to get to custom arch supports until you're further along in the arch development process, because then you'll be in between sizes on arch supports. And that's where custom arch support comes into effect, or custom orthotics. And so a lot of our clients, they'll start out with super feet, something generic, and then they'll build their way up, and then they'll want some customized orthotics later on when they've built their way up where they're above that arch. And that really shows them that they're doing better and they're actually effective in building their arch. And that's something that you can use as a measurement. When you stop touching with the lowest or middle level of a super feet, then you'll be able to see that, hey, this isn't working for me anymore. I need to go to something a little bit bigger. But it is important in the beginning to get rid of that inflammation. Give yourself a little bit of extra support while you're building the arch. Also with shoes. Now there's all kinds of shoes, and I'm not a shoe expert, but I am obsessed with wide toe box shoes. The argument was given to me that when we're born, our feet, if you look at a baby, your kids or grandkids, their toes are splaying out like this. Some people call them summer feet because people are walking around in the summer outside without shoes on, and so their toes start to splay out. If you wear a wide toe box shoe for an extended period of time, you're going to notice that you're not able to fit into more narrow toe box shoes. So that actually happened with me. I had a foot injury about 2 years ago, and I got into this wide toe box thing, and then now I can't wear Air Force Ones. So the toe box is too thin and my toes are spread out, and I don't want to get bunions. So the argument is that the shoes are not designed by somebody, a foot and ankle specialist. They're designed by a shoe company, and they're meant for style. And if style is really that important to you, then you might want to avoid these wide toe box shoes because they don't get that stylish. They somewhat stylish. So there's Lems is one that's a little bit more stylish of a shoe, and then Altras is more of a sporty shoe, and that's what I wear on a daily basis. So it's just wider here in the toe box, and that's something that I really enjoy. And so it's something that it's going to help you grip with your toes more as well. So when you're trying to develop that plantar fascia and develop the arch support by having your toes be able to spread out, if you're really focused on function and support and strengthening your body, then checking out wide toe box shoes of those Altra and the Limbs or some other brands. I'm not dead set on those two, but those are the two I use. And so you should check those out as well. Now with these exercises and the stretches is something we need to work into a routine. So on a daily basis, within an hour of waking up in the morning, and then also about 5 to 6 p.m., not right before bed, but let's start working it into a routine on a daily basis. I do it when I go to take a shower. I walk myself with my feet all the way to the shower, just alternating. And it's something that I can do consistently because I started doing it, and then now I do it on a daily basis. And it's helped me develop that arch support because otherwise I'm not developing those muscles at all. Now, the biggest thing at the end of this video is to never sit on the inside of your foot. And I've seen this with kids a lot where they're standing, so they'll have pain, and then I'll see them standing at the front desk or standing while their parents are talking to them, and they'll stand like this. So that knee is coming inward, we're getting internal rotation at the femur, and they're collapsing on the arch. You do that for an hour to 2 hours a day. If you're just standing and falling on the inside of that arch, we're just caving in. So that's a habit that we have to change. If anything, like we'd like to be balanced and like to use the arches of the feet. We're an energy efficient creature, so we are gonna try to conserve energy as much as possible. What we wanna do is try to use those muscles, but the best thing, if you're not able to engage your feet all the time, is just sitting on the outside of the feet. Just get your pressure on the outside of the feet more, sit on the outside of the foot, trying to put more pressure to the outside of the foot instead of falling on your arches. It's just something to look out for. It's a habit that I see way too often with these fallen arches, and so let's change it as quickly as possible. Check out our other videos here on the foot and ankle. We'll see you in the next video. Get mobile and stay active.